Hello again. Here I am in a completely different place. This is not, as you can see, this is not my office. This is not my library. I'm much further south. I'm in Florida. We're traveling at the moment. And I was hoping to get away from all these videos so I could get some other work done. But because of the fact of the video I put up 2 days ago, been getting an awful lot of emails and people who are texting me, and I think there has been a confusion, and there's been some people who are just not following, possibly because this is brand new, and not many people have really looked at a timeline and actually put it on a timeline. So there is difficulty understanding what we're talking about, and so what I like to do is just redo what I did 2 days ago, but in much shorter form, just looking at the timelines and putting them along the timelines so that you can follow them. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to go back to my PowerPoint and share the PowerPoint with you here on the video, and hopefully that will bring it together and help you, many of you who are for the first time, for understandably, this is new. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and let's start this PowerPoint, and let's walk you through these slides one at a time. I'll bring them up onto the video itself so we can walk through it together. Now, take a look here. You can see at the beginning here, we're going to show you a picture of Hatun's 37 Arabic Qurans. These are the Qurans that she has been able to find. Many people have bought them for her in different countries like Morocco and Jordan, Yemen, places like that. 37 different Arabic Qurans with 37 different authors, all in Arabic. Any two of them that are alike. Now let's look at the 30 official readers and transmitters. These are the official ones that you see today, and these are the ones, when you go up on Wikipedia, this is taken from Wikipedia just to make it as easy as possible for you. These are the 30 that they have listed. On the left, you will see the readers, Nafi ibn Kathir, Abu Amr ibn Amir, Asim ibn al-Najud, Hamza al-Zayyat, and al-Kisai. They are the 7 that we're going to talk about. Those are the 7 that are the most important. Chosen by Ibn Mujahid in 936. Below that, you'll see 8, 9, and 10. Abu Jafar, Yaqub, al-Yamani, Khalaf. Chosen by al-Jazari in 1429. So 7 plus 3 make the 10. Those are the 10. Whenever we talk about 10 qira'at, whenever Shabir Ali or Yasir Qadi is talking about the 10 qira'at, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about those 10 there. Then on the right side, you'll see 2 columns. Can you see that? 2 columns. Those are the transmitters. These are those who have been chosen much later. I would suggest, we don't know a date exactly when they were chosen, but obviously they would have to be chosen after the 10 were chosen, and the 10 were finalized by al-Jazari in 1429. So sometime after 1429, these 22 columns were chosen, 2 from each of the main readers on the left. And that's why you have 2 columns on the right. And of course we want to highlight this guy here, Hafs. Hafs is the one that we're using today. So let's put this all in perspective. Let's get the timeline out and let's see what we're talking about. Well, to begin with, here you go. All you know is what we've been told, according to the traditions, according to what Yasir Qadi has been saying, and also what our good friend Shabir Ali has been saying, is that when Muhammad died, there was one Quran. He died in 632. So, just one Quran. We begin with just this one Quran. And assuming, because of the fact Muhammad comes from Mecca, and because he lived in Medina later on, he spoke the Qurayshi dialect. So this Quran would be the Qurayshi Quran. This is the Qurayshi dialect that was spoken there in Mecca and Medina. So we're assuming now that this is the one that's also in heaven. Because if there was only one Quran that Muslims keep on telling us, there is only one Quran, that would be the Qurayshi Quran that has always existed. It existed in heaven, and it was sent down by the angel Gabriel, or Jibril as they call him, to Muhammad between 610 and 632. So at the time of his death, there was one Quran. However, hold on a minute. We've been told by Yasir Qadi and also by Shabir Ali, and also by the traditions. The traditions say that at the time Muhammad was living, there were many different dialects. And so he goes to Jibril and he says, what about these other dialects? They're not, my Muslim friends are not going to understand the Qurayshi dialect. We need some other dialects. And so Jibril introduced another six. And so another six were introduced, which makes seven. Because the Qurayshi, that's seven readings. So seven different dialects, seven different readings that we have there in 632. So from one, we now go up to seven. Are you following that? So now we don't have, well, now we now go to seven Qur'ans, seven different Qur'ans with seven different readings, according to the traditions and, of course, in Yasir Qadi. Now, after all this happened, 20 years later, there was a big battle up in Azerbaijan. And some of the Meccans and some of the Medinans went up to the battle, and they joined others, Muslims that were from much further north and further east, from Shams, which would be Syria today, Damascus and places like that, east, which would be Iraq, Kufa and Basra. And they all joined together to fight against these Azerbaijanis. While they were there, obviously they heard people reciting the Quran differently, because they were reciting it in their own dialects, which is different from that of the Qurayshi, the people down in Mecca and Medina. And Hudayfa, who was up there, was quite upset about this, and he comes back down to Uthman. Uthman, who is caliph by this time. He was caliph. We're talking about 650, 652, so roughly 20 years after Muhammad had died. You have this problem within Islam. You have this problem with Muslims who do not like the fact that the Quran is now being recited in other dialects. And so Hudayfa comes back, and I'll read you what he says in Sahih Bukhari, volume 6, book number 61, hadith number 510. He returns and he says he was afraid of that's the people of Sham in Iraq, the differences in the recitation of the Quran. So he said to Uthman, O chief of the believers, save this nation before they differ about the book, that means the Quran, as Jews and the Christians did before. So Uthman sent a message to Hafsa, that's what used to be the wife of Muhammad, saying, send us the manuscripts of the Quran so that we may compile the Quranic materials in perfect copies and return the manuscripts to you. Hafsa sent that to Uthman. So here you have Hudayfa coming back from this battle, all upset because he's heard these many different other dialects that are not like his dialect. And he says to Uthman, you must make one Quran, so we don't have many Qurans. So Uthman creates that Quran. He has Zayd ibn Thabit, the secretary of Muhammad, the one who first wrote the first Quran back in 632 with Abu Bakr, given to Hafsa, one of the wives of Muhammad. She kept it under her bed for about 20 years. And he gets that Quran and has Zayd ibn Thabit rewrite the new Quran in the, you remember this is very, very important, in the Qurayshi dialect. In the Qurayshi dialect. So from one Quran up to seven Qurans, it now comes back down to one Quran again. Back to one Quran. And this is the Qurayshi Quran. And this is the Quran that all the traditions tell us, including the Muslims today tell us, and Yasir Qadi said this, so does Shabir Ali, that this one Quran then, it was sent to 5 cities. One was left in Medina, one was sent to Mecca, one was sent to Basra, one was sent to Kufa, just south of Baghdad, and one was sent up to Damascus. So those are the 5 cities, Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus. Those are the 5 cities they were sent to as the mother copy, as the basic, the one that everybody is to follow. This is the one Quran. This is the only Quran. This is the Uthmanic recension, which all the other Muslims were now to come to. And with each of these Qurans was sent a reciter. Somebody to make sure that they would not waver in any way, with any word, with any letter, with any dialect, that they would not go off any other Quran. They would only have this one Quran, the Qurayshi Quran. The Qurayshi Quran, why? Because that's the one that's in heaven. That's the one that was revealed to Muhammad. That's the one that now Uthman has canonized as the official, the only Quran. They only want one Quran, and that's the Quran. And that's why 5 readers were sent to 5 different cities. And that's where the story is in 652. 652. Now we go 80 years later. Let's now go to 80 years later. And suddenly we see other Qurans start to appear. And you have a Quran that appears here in Damascus. And I'm going to go in order of of dates, not in order of importance, okay? There are many different lists of what I'm going to do now, but this is the list that I'm giving you. I'm giving you in dates because I want you to see the dates. The dates are important. That's why I have a timeline here. I really want you to understand this timeline. I want you to visually see what we're talking about. So this man, Ibn Amir from Damascus, he dies in 736. He is the first to write down another Qur'an, not the Qurayshi. This is not Qurayshi. This is from Damascus. Damascus is Shams. This is one of those dialects way up in the north. This is one of the dialects that they didn't like. This is one of the dialects that they came to blows over. This is one of the dialects that those who were at the Battle of Azerbaijan were so upset about, especially those who were down from those from Mecca and Medina. They were so upset about that they did not want anybody speaking this dialect, and so this is one of those that is from the dialects you're not to use. And yet, the first of these new Qur'ans, comes from Damascus. This man dies in 736. Now, it could be that obviously he didn't write it the year he died, so possibly between 716 to 736, the last 20 years of his life. Let's give, for all these dates, I'm giving you the death date, because this is why it's important. That's how we do it. And whenever you're talking about timelines, you always go with the date they died. Because you know they couldn't have written after they died. It all had to be written before they died. So the assumption is roughly 10 to 20 years before they died is when they wrote down their Qur'an. 736. The second one to write their Qur'an down is Ibn Kathir from Mecca. 738, 2 years later. The third one to write their Qur'an down was from Kufa. His name was Asim ibn Abi al-Najud. Important. Hold on to that name. That's going to come part later on. He died in 745. So now we're getting into the mid-8th century. The fourth one to write their Qur'an down was Abu Amr ibn al-Ala from Basra, 770. Now we're getting towards the end of the 8th century. You notice this? We're getting now, this is a good 100 and, we're talking about a good 140 years after Muhammad dies that we're getting this Qur'an. This is number 4. Number 5 is Hamza al-Zayyad from Kufa, which is in Iraq, 772. That's even later. Then you get finally another one from Medina, which would be a Qurayshi Quran, and that's 785. Goodness sakes, that's 150 years after Muhammad. And then finally you get Al-Qasai from Kufa, 805. Now we're into the 9th century. Now we're 170 years later. This is long after Muhammad. Those are the 7. These are known as the 7 Qira'at. Hold on a minute. I thought there were 7 at the very beginning. Wasn't there 7 that Muhammad had asked for when he asked Jibril that he had many people that were speaking in different dialects they would not understand the Qurayshi dialect? Didn't he ask Jibril specifically to have 7? Well, what happened to those 7? Because now we have another 7, and these 7 don't even begin to appear until the 8th century, until the beginning of the 8th century. None of them are there at the time of Muhammad. This is a good 100 years. This is over 100 years after Muhammad. In fact, up to 150 years after Muhammad that these 7 appear. So who chose these 7? Did Muhammad choose these 7? I've always been told he did. No, he didn't choose these 7. This guy chose these 7. Ibn Mujahid. He died in 936. That's the 10th century. That's 300 years after Muhammad died. You get this guy named Ibn Mujahid who chooses these 7. What about the 7 readings that were back there in Muhammad's time? What happened to those 7 readings? Are these the same 7 readings? They can't be the same, because at the 7 readings that you have at the time of Muhammad, there was no way to read it differently. There was no way to write it down differently. There was no diacritical marks. There were no vowelizations to even know how to write it down. So there couldn't have been 7 readings then. Although you have to wonder, then what is it that Uthman burned in 652? Remember, he burned anything that disagreed with the Qurayshi dialect. All those other readings he burned. If you're burning, as I've said over and over and over again, I hope you're getting this. If you're burning something, you have to burn manuscripts. You can't burn people's tongues. You can't burn their recitations. You can't burn what they say. You've got to burn what they're reading. These are written texts. So what happened to those? Did he burn them all so exclusively that nothing existed, and these had to be recreated then in the 8th century? Ibn Mujahid took another, it took him 300 years to make his decision, and what we're told now is that he had all these isnads, all these other readers. Listen, folks, I haven't even got into that. If you want to know how many other readers between the 8th century and the 10th century, when Ibn Mujahid was finally putting him down, let me just give you an example. Take a look at the second one, Ibn Kathir. from Mecca. We now know that between the time of Ibn Kathir in 738 and the time Ibn Mujahid was finally decided who his two reciters were, Al-Bazi and Kunbul, we now know that there were 37 others that he could have chosen from, that came on the line of Ibn Kathir. But all of these isnads that Muslims are telling us about, all these different reciters that Muslims are telling us about, come after these 7 you see here. They come all after these 7. They come after 736, 738, 745, 770, 772, 785, and 805. They come after all those dates. Each one of those 7 there were given two transmitters or 2 students of theirs were then chosen, as we're going to see later. Nonetheless, right now we have 7, okay? These are the 7. Hold on a minute. There's another 3 that were added, weren't there? We know of another 3. Who are the other 3? Well, take a look. Abu Jafar from Medina. He died in 748, all right? Then you have Yaqub al-Yamani from Basra. He died in 821. And then we have Khalaf from Kufa. He died in 844. That's midway through the 9th century. These are 3 more that are added to those 7. Why are these 3 added to the 7 when I have never heard of these 3 yet? I've only ever heard of 7 before this. Well, it's because of this guy right here, Al-Jazari. In the 15th century, 1429, he is the one that actually adds these 3 because he felt that these 3 needed to be added to the 7 to make 10, because 7 plus 3 in my book means 10. That means there are now 10 official Qurans. You add 7 to 3, you get 10. And these are the 10 that Yasser Qadi is talking about. These are the 10 that Shabir is talking about. Remember what Yasser Qadi said, that these 10 are the creme de la creme. These are the best of the best. These are the ultimate. These are the 10 that are standard, that everybody, everywhere, at any time, at any place knows as the official 10. These are the official 10. Forget about the first one. Forget about the 7. Forget about the Qurayshi one. Let's go to these 7 plus 3, which equal 10. And it's these 10 that Muslims are claiming are the creme de la creme, the best of the best of all the reciters. Now look at their dates. 736, 738, 745, 770, 772, 785, 805, 748, 821, 844. Look at their dates, folks. These people don't even begin to write their Qurans until the 8th and 9th century. Muhammad died in the 7th century at 632. The Qurayshi dialect, the official one that all Muslims are to use today, was written in 652. Muhammad died 632, 20 years earlier. Folks, you've got to look at a timeline to see why this is so disturbing. And yet what's fascinating is there are 2 names that are missing here. The 2 most important names. Because the Quran that I am using today, the Quran that we're all using today, the Quran that everybody, 90% according to Yasser Qadi around the world is using, but all of us in Europe, all of us in the West are using this Quran. This is the 1924 Hafs text. This is the Hafs Quran. So where is the name Hafs in anywhere on that page? Can you see that name? I don't see it. Ibn Amir, Ibn Kathir, Asim, Abu Amr, Hamza, Nafi, Al-Kisahi, Abu Jafar, Yaqub, Khalaf. Where is Hafs? Where is Warsh? Those are the 2 most important. Where are their names? Because I thought they should be the creme de la creme. I think they should be the best of the best. Why? Because that's the one that was chosen by, first of all, 1924, who chooses it for Cairo, Muhammad al-Husayni, al-Haddad. And then you have that Hafs text that he chose for Cairo, then chosen for all of Egypt in 1936, and that was chosen for Egypt in 1936 was then chosen for the whole world by King Fahd in 1985, 35 years ago. So I would assume it should be on this list. It's not on this list. So where is our good friend Warsh and Hafs? Where is Warsh and Hafs? You'd like to know. I'd like to know. Can you then understand why we're asking this question? Now there are 10 official qira'ats, 10 official qira'at Qurans, and Warsh and Hafs are missing from the 10 official qira'at Qurans. So where did they come in? Well, to understand that, you're going to have to look at this timeline. Let's go now. There are the 10 official qira'at at the top, right? Ibn Mujahid, who chose the first 7. Al-Jazari, who chose the next 3, making 10. There they are in green and red on your right-hand side. You can see they come a century to 2 centuries to 3 centuries after Muhammad. But they were chosen 800 years after Muhammad. 800 years for Al-Jazari finally to choose these 10. These are the 10. 7 chosen by Ibn Mujahid, another 3 added by Al-Jazari. So therefore, where is Hafs and Warsh? To understand where they are, you need to go to this list, the purple. And there is Warsh in Hafs in yellow. I've highlighted them in yellow. And it is Hafs, the one that we use today, that I circled in black. That's the Hafs that we use today. But he died in 796. Warsh, which is used all over North Africa, he died in 812. Hafs comes on the line of Asim ibn Abi al-Najud, who is from Kufa. Kufa is in Iraq. Isn't that the dialect that you're not to use? Isn't that the dialect that Hudayfa got so upset about? Isn't that the dialect that we have been told is not really the dialect that Muhammad used, is not the dialect that's in heaven, is the dialect that brought blows amongst the Muslims when they were there in Azerbaijan and they were fighting alongside each other? And Hudayfa says, we've got to get this one dialect back again. We've got to write the Quran in the Qurayshi dialect, not in the dialect of Kufa, because the dialect of Kufa, remember, the dialect of Kufa comes from Ibn Masud. Ibn Masud is the one that wrote the dialect of Kufa. He is the one that is responsible for that. He didn't have as many of surahs, books, in his Quran as you have with Zayd ibn Thabit. Ubay ibn Ka'b, again, from Damascus. He is the other one that they were using. Ubay ibn Ka'b and Ibn Masud were rejected. Their Qurans were rejected. And it was Zayd ibn Thabit's that was finally accepted. And we know that the other Qurans had 111 surahs. Another one had 2 extra 116 surahs, where Zayd ibn Thabit had 114 surahs. So even the number of surahs differs depending on whether you're from Damascus or you're from Kufa or you're from Medina, where Zayd ibn Thabit did his Quran. Can you then understand why we have to ask these questions? Just looking at this graph, look where Hafs is. He's way, way too late. So now we have 30 official Qurans. 7 green ones that were chosen by Ibn Mujahid, 3 red ones that were chosen by Al-Jazari, and then the purple ones, 20 of them, who are the students, who are the transmitters, that come in much, much later. They come in, I'm assuming, chosen after Al-Jazari chose the 10, because you can't have the 20 reciters of the 10 until the 10 are first chosen. Am I correct? So therefore, I'm assuming that the purple ones, the ones at the bottom, were then finally chosen but sometime after the 15th century, 1429. Now, I'm just going to remind you, look at Abd al-Malik. I just put his name up there. Look and see when his date is 692. I'm going to keep reminding you of that because that's going to come in later on. I just want you to remember that everything we're talking about comes after Abd al-Malik. The reason I'm bringing this up is because if those of you who've been following my videos, you know that I've been looking at the 7th century. And when you look at the 7th century, you've got to ask, what is it about Islam? Where is this material about Islam? Where is there a person called Muhammad? Where is there a place called Mecca? Where there are the people called Muslims? Where is this religion called Islam? And where is this book called the Qur'an prior to Abd al-Malik? And Abd al-Malik is 692. Everything on this timeline that we're talking about comes after 692, except for the original Qur'an, the first one. And that one we just seem not to find. We don't know where that one is. Nonetheless, I'll just remind you of that. Now, where do we get all this material from? Everybody's been asking, and this is a good question, all this that you're talking about, what does it and where does it come from? Well, let's look at the next graph, because the next graph shows you that this is where they are writing it down. And if you look at these qira'at, you'll see the 5 cities that are there: Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Syria. And there you can see where each one of the reciters are, and then you can see where the transmitters are. Now take a look and notice when you go and show where Hafs is, he's circled in black there, All the other ones, all the other transmitters, look how many differences they have between them and Hafs. And this is another thing that Muslims do not want you to see. They don't want you to see how many differences there are. There are thousands. Let's look at those numbers there. 1,094, 1,300 differences, 2,600 differences, 2,800 differences, up to 5,000 differences with Abu Ali al-Harith from that of Hafs. These are differences between their Qurans and the Hafs Quran that we use today. So far, the team there in London, Hatun's team, Hatun Tash is the one that's done all this. She's the one that has collected all these Qurans. She is the one that's done the work on this. And her team has found so far, they have found 93,000 differences. 93,000 differences between all these other Qurans and the Hafs Qurans. And that's just looking at 23 of them so far. So, folks, can you see why we need to put this in public, why we need to get it out there? Now, let's go back and see where all this material comes from. Everything I've told you, everything I've said, you don't just trust Yasser Qadi. It's not just Yasser Qadi. It's not just Shabir Ali who are telling us this. They're going to material that they have to. They're dependent on. And they're dependent on the Islamic traditions. Everything they know about how Islam began, how the Quran was put together, who Muhammad was, what he said, what he did, where he went, all the things, all the stories surrounding him, all come from the Islamic traditions. And the Islamic traditions include the Sirah, which would be the biography of Muhammad, the Hadith, which would be the sayings of Muhammad, the Tafsir, which would be the commentaries on the Quran, and the Tahriq, which would be the histories. And most people, when you hear them say this, you think, so all this stuff is coming from the time Muhammad died. Remember, there he is on the left. Muhammad died in 632. Uthman wrote the Quran in 652. That's the canonical text that we use today. The problem is this. Here is the same problem we've just been looking at when you come to the Qira'at writings. Because the Sirah did not exist at all at the time of Muhammad. The Sirah was first written down by Ibn Hisham. He died in 833. Now, Ibn Ishaq is credited with first writing the Sirah down, but we don't have any of Ibn Ishaq's material. He died in 765. So, roughly 70 to 80 years earlier. But we don't have his material at all. There's nothing there. We're only dependent on Ibn Hisham. So the earliest we can say is Ibn Hisham, because Ibn Hisham only retained what he wanted to throughout the rest. So really the only biography, the first written extant biography that we have today is Ibn Hisham. That's 833. Now the hadith come much later. There are no hadith at the time of Muhammad. There are no hadith, no sayings of the Prophet Muhammad during his lifetime. They come of Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari is the first to write a hadith. And he wrote the hadith down in 870. Look at the date, 870. 870, that is not the 7th century. That is not the 8th century. That is the late 9th century. What about all the tafsir, the commentaries, which is the tafsir, which is the third genre, and the tahriq, which would be the history? Well, the first one to write down any of the tafsir and any of the tahriq is this man here, Al-Tabari, and he died in 923. 923, that is the 10th century. The 10th century. So everything we know about Muhammad, about who he was, what he did, what he said, everything we know about everything, really about everything, how Islam began with these people, Ibn Hisham, Al-Bukhari, Al-Tabari. Folks, that's 200 to 290 years too late. 200 to 290 years too late. How can you trust it? How do you know whether anything Ibn Hisham said, or Al-Bukhari said, or wrote, or anything Al-Tabari wrote is authoritative or authentic? It's all based on oral tradition. It's all based on matans and isnads, as Muslims call it. These chains of names of so-and-so told me got it from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so, who got it from the companion of the Prophet. But that's 200 and 290 years of so-and-so's telling so-and-so's, but no one's writing it down. And that's why you have to be so suspicious of it, because it's all nothing more than oral tradition. And oral tradition, like we've been saying over and over again, can be embellished, can be deleted, accreted, you name it, can be corrupted. And does get accreted and deleted, especially if it's oral tradition dealing with the greatest man, as far as you're concerned, that you know, the man that you are holding to as the one that you hold up as the paradigm for your entire religion. And that's why we're saying you need to look at these dates. You need to look at this timeline. Now, I'm just going to put up good old Abdul Malik's date again there, just to remind you. You notice all of these traditions, the Sirah, the Hadith, the Tafsir, and the Tahriq, all come after, long after Abdul Malik. Abdul Malik is the one that we're looking at as the one that started this whole thing, and you can then understand why we're putting his name up there, 692. This all comes after 692. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. I hope that will give you the material that you need, and I hope also that this will be able, something that visually, just looking at it visually, you will be able to see that nothing so far that Yasser Qadhi has been saying, or Shabir Ali, everything they've been telling us is all based on these traditions, these Islamic traditions, the Sirah, the Hadith, the Tafsir, the Tahri, none of which were at the time of Muhammad, none of which were at the time of Uthman. They come 200 to 300 years later, looking at all of the Qira'at that we're looking at, the 7 green Qira'at, the 3 that were added, making the 10 official Qira'at, and then the other 20 that were added to that. That is 30 Qira'at, 30 different Qira'at. They all come after Abd al-Malik. That's significant. That's significant. And we'll be talking about that more. Listen, I hope this makes it a lot more sense to you. I try to make it as quick as possible. I try to keep it under a half hour. It looks like I went over just a bit over a half hour. But bear with me. I am traveling. I don't have all my equipment with me, so I'm going to have to slap this together as best I can. But listen, it's good to be with you. It's good to talk about these things. Let's see how Muslims respond to this. Now that we've got these timelines there, feel free, any of you, to screenshot or grab any of this material. You can use it. Please don't abuse it. Please pass it on to others. And also help Muslims to realize that they've got to talk about these dates, these late dates. You can't get over and see is that there was a Quran that was first 1, and then it went to 7, back to 1 again, then back to 7, then up to 10, then up to 30, and then it comes back to 1 again. So you can see why we're saying this. It is very, very important that when you're looking at all these dates, and you're looking at all these different Qurans, and you're looking at the traditions that tell us about how this Quran is put together, that we put it on a timeline and realize there is not just one Quran. How can 1 equal 7, then equal 1, then equal 10, then equal 20, then equal 30? How can you do that? Remember, Muslims always come to us and they say, how can 1 plus 1 plus 1 equal 1, when they try to confront us with the Trinity? I would ask Muslims the same question, put it right back in their lap. You say there's only one Quran. You're always saying there's only one Quran. But now you're telling us that there's 7. Then you're saying that there's 10. Then you're saying that there's 30. Now you're saying it's back to 1 again. And yet you're still got the 30 there. You can buy them in the marketplaces. God bless these Muslims. Aren't they great? We got coming and going because of the claims they make. And their claims, they cannot help it, because their claims are not what they invent, not what they create. It's because their traditions tell them so. And they've got to follow their traditions. Okay, this is Jay, here in Florida. Over and out.